Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox 922 on the East Coast and 622 on the West Coast. The U.S. sending warships and aircraft to keep an eye on a convoy of Russian vessels over in the Caribbean Sea. Those ships are not too far from the Florida coast where they were spotted, and they appear to have now reached Cuban waters. Russian soldiers aboard one stood in military formation as they did approach the island. U.S. officials have said they expect the Russian ships will remain in that region through the summer. Do want to bring in Rebecca Grant, a senior fellow at the Lexington Institute, to talk a little bit more about all of this here. As always, Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here and talk about Putin's latest actions.
And first off, a lot of folks over the last, I would say, 24 hours are kind of getting bits and pieces of what's going on here. So can you break it down for us overall, this situation there in the Caribbean?
Yes, with so much else going on in the G7 in Europe, but Russia has sent a tiny little task force of 4 ships across the Atlantic and down to Cuba. Now, the ship you really want to watch is the guided missile submarine that's included in that group. And guarantee you, our Navy tracked the whole transit across the Atlantic. So we have a real close eye on Putin's Russian Navy ships.
What kind of Russian warships are we talking about? You went into a little detail there, but do we know overall their capabilities?
Yes, it looks like there are 4. One is a frigate, that's a surface vessel, also a guided missile submarine, and along with them, reportedly, an oiler for fuel and a rescue tug, I guess in case they get into some kind of trouble. But it's really the frigate and the submarine that Putin is using to show off. The submarine is reportedly able to carry a type of hypersonic missile that flies in an evasive pattern. And so he's showing that in a threatening way. And there are reports that the frigate may carry a different hypersonic missile as well. So this is Putin who's responding to NATO exercises, to the use of HIMARS in Ukraine, to all these things, responding by trying to show off some Russian naval power. And you know, Josh, the Russian Navy is afraid to sail very far in the Black Sea because so many of their ships have been lost there. But hey, they're still happy to come and stir up trouble around Cuba.
And I have to ask overall, why Cuba?
Because of the long-standing old Cold War relationship and because Cuba is so close to the United States that it freaks out the Americans to see Russian naval forces there. And understandably, we're not used to having capable enemy forces very close to our shores. So he's touching history, but also trying to show that Russia is still at least a little bit of a military superpower.
And I know that the Pentagon was asked many times about this yesterday because those ships were, of course, spotted off the Florida coast. They were, I think, at one point, maybe 60 to 100 miles away. So folks were trying to figure out exactly what was going on. The Pentagon says there's no reason for Americans to be concerned, but that they are tracking those ships. So what do you make of all of that?
Oh, tracking them very closely. And don't forget, the Coast Guard has a national security cutter. That's a huge Whitehall ship down in that area. Reportedly 3 destroyers from the Atlantic Fleet. I guarantee you, we have a couple of fast attack submarines, maybe even the USS Florida, which is home ported out of Georgia. Everybody very, very closely watching these naval maneuvers. Of course, Putin wants us to do that, and it's all within range of our land-based air power, plus our satellites are watching. So they won't be drinking tea on the bridge of a Russian ship without us seeing it. But it is worrying, and we worry because that means that for at least a little while, Florida was technically within range of some of the weapons on those Russian naval ships.
And my last question here, we were discussing this a bit earlier, but Putin years ago did mention attacks of some kind on Florida, right?
Yes, in 2018, he released a video showing a simulated nuclear strike on Florida. Again, saber rattling, but I think Putin's got a bit of an obsession with Florida and, of course, the ability to try to use that naval power. You know, his land forces are tied down. and Russia is becoming a vassal state to China as their overlords. So he's using this to threaten again. And yeah, it reminded me of that 2018 video showing a simulated Russian nuclear strike on Florida. What a despicable man.
Yeah, Rebecca Grant, thank you so much as always for taking the time to be here with us. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
I'm really proud both of our Coast Guard and of our U.S. Navy sailors and our entire joint military keeping an eye on the Russians. They're going to learn a lot about current Russian capabilities after this exercise.
Oh, I'm sure. Thank you again for taking the time to be here with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.